Victor Ashford stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse, gazing out at the city lights that sparkled like diamonds below. Despite owning half the skyline before him, he felt like the poorest man alive. Behind him, the sound of his family's laughter echoed through the marble halls, but it wasn't the warm laughter of love. It was the hollow sound of people celebrating his money, not him. At 62, Victor had built an empire worth billions. But tonight, as he watched his wife Patricia counting her shopping receipts and his daughter Sophia live streaming her latest designer haul, he realized the devastating truth. He was surrounded by people who loved his wallet more than his heart. The realization hit him like a physical blow. When was the last time someone in his family had asked how he was feeling? When had they last shown genuine concern for anything other than their next purchase? His chest tightened as he remembered his late daughter Amanda, who had died in a tragic accident 15 years ago. She was the only one who had ever looked at him with pure love. No calculations, no expectations, just the innocent adoration of a child for her father. Since her death, this house had become a mausoleum of materialism, and he was dying inside it. Victor's morning routine was a masterclass in loneliness disguised as luxury. Patricia, his wife of 25 years, barely glanced up from her phone as he entered the breakfast room. She was scrolling through her social media, admiring comments on her latest charity gala photos, events she attended not for compassion, but for the Instagram opportunities they provided. "Good morning, darling," Victor said, settling into his chair at the head of the 12-person dining table, where only 3 seats were ever occupied. Hmm, Patricia mumbled, not looking up. "I need 50,000 for the new art piece I saw yesterday. The dealer said it's a limited time offer." Their daughter Sophia, 24 and obsessed with her influencer career, burst into the room with the energy of someone who had just discovered money. "Dad, I need to upgrade my car. The Mercedes is so last season and my followers are starting to notice. I'm thinking of something more exclusive, maybe a Lamborghini." Victor's heart sank. No good morning, no how did you sleep, just demands wrapped in entitlement. Even his son Daniel, 26 and the most grounded of his children, seemed distant lately, absorbed in his own world of investment banking and corporate climbing. The family's conversations revolved around acquisitions, not affections. Their dining room felt more like a board meeting where Victor was the CEO being pitched to, not a father being loved. Patricia's friends visited for the wine collection and the view, not for her company. Sophia's followers loved her lifestyle content, not her personality. And Daniel had learned to navigate the family's materialism by becoming successful in his own right. But in doing so, had grown emotionally distant from everyone. Victor realized he was raising a family of beautiful strangers who happened to share his last name and his bank account. That evening, Victor sat in his private study, staring at the family portrait on his desk, a professional photo where everyone smiled perfectly but looked through each other rather than at each other. He picked up his phone and called Michael, his trusted personal assistant of 15 years. "Michael, I need you to help me with something unusual," Victor said when Michael arrived. "I want to test whether my family loves me or my money." Michael's eyebrows raised. "Sir? I want to move all my assets into a secure, untraceable account under your name. Then I'm going to tell my family I've lost everything, that bad investments and market crashes have wiped us out. I want to see who stays when they think the money is gone." Michael was quiet for a long moment. "Mr. Ashford, are you sure about this? It's quite extreme." "I'm dying inside, Michael. I need to know if I have a family or if I just have very expensive roommates." The plan was meticulous. Michael would transfer all assets to offshore accounts, making it appear as though Victor's businesses had collapsed. They would stage financial documents showing massive losses, and Victor would deliver the devastating news to his family. Then, they would move to a small village where Victor owned a simple property, a place so humble that no one who knew him would ever think to look for him there. 2 days later, Victor gathered his family in the living room. Patricia was examining her nails, Sophia was editing photos on her phone, and Daniel was reviewing stock reports. The scene was perfectly symbolic of their disconnection. I have something important to tell you all, Victor began, his voice heavy with manufactured despair. We've lost everything. The room fell silent. Patricia's hand froze halfway to her face. Sophia's phone slipped slightly in her grip. Only Daniel looked up with genuine concern. What do you mean? Lost everything? Patricia's voice was sharp, accusing. Victor explained the fictional financial collapse, how his investments had failed, how the businesses had crumbled, how they were now essentially broke. He watched their faces carefully, hoping to see concern for his well being, worry about his emotional state. Instead, he saw fear, but not for him. Fear for themselves. Patricia's face contorted with rage. How could you be so careless? How could you let this happen to us? Sophia burst into tears, not for her father's pain, but for her lifestyle. What about my brand, my followers? I can't be seen as poor. Only Daniel asked the right question. Dad, are you okay? This must be devastating for you. Victor's heart broke a little more, but also felt a flicker of hope. At least one of his children had inherited his capacity for empathy. The car ride to the village was a torture chamber of complaints. Patricia sat in the passenger seat, her face a mask of disgust and fury. She hadn't spoken to Victor directly since the announcement, instead making cutting remarks to the air. I can't believe I'm being forced to live like a peasant, and this is not the life I signed up for. Sophia, in the back seat, was having a social media meltdown. I can't post anything. How do I explain this to my followers? My entire brand is luxury lifestyle. I'm ruined. She was crying. Not the tears of someone who loved her father and wanted to support him, but the tears of someone mourning her own image. Daniel, sitting beside his sister, remained calm. He occasionally reached over to pat Victor's shoulder from the back seat, offering quiet words of encouragement. We'll figure this out, Dad. We're family. The village was a shock to the system. After hours of driving through increasingly rural roads, they arrived at a small mud brick house with a thatched roof. There was no marble, no gold fixtures, no panoramic views, just a simple dwelling that represented everything Victor's family had never experienced: modesty. Patricia refused to get out of the car for 10 minutes. When she finally did, she stood in the doorway like someone entering a crime scene. You expect me to live here? In this hovel? Sophia took one look at the interior and declared, I'm not staying. This is impossible. There's no Wi-Fi, no proper lighting for photos, no space for my things. But Daniel surprised everyone. He picked up his bag, looked around the simple room and said, It's not so bad, we'll make it work. That night, as they settled into their new reality, Victor watched his family adapt or fail to adapt to their circumstances. Patricia refused to cook, claiming she didn't know how to work with such primitive equipment. Sophia spent the evening trying to find cell service to call her friends to rescue her. Daniel, however, helped Victor organize their few belongings and even attempted to make dinner for everyone. Victor realized he was seeing his family's true characters for the first time in years. 3 days into their new life, a knock came at the door. Victor opened it to find a young woman, perhaps 25, with dark hair and the most striking eyes he'd ever seen. She was soaked from the rain, shivering and clearly in distress. Please, she said softly, I have nowhere else to go. I was traveling and my car broke down. I don't have money for a hotel. Without hesitation, Victor invited her in. Of course, come in. You're welcome to stay until you get back on your feet. The woman introduced herself as Hope, but something about her seemed familiar to Victor in a way he couldn't explain. She was quiet, graceful, and had an otherworldly quality that made everyone feel calmer in her presence. Everyone except Patricia. From the moment Hope entered their temporary home, Patricia's behavior became increasingly hostile. She watched Hope with the intensity of a predator, her jealousy manifesting in cruel, subtle ways. We don't have enough food for another person, Patricia would say loudly whenever Hope was in earshot, despite the fact that Hope barely ate anything. I don't understand why strangers think they can just impose on families during difficult times, Patricia would mutter, while Hope was helping with household chores. Hope never responded to Patricia's cruelty. She would simply continue her tasks with a serene expression, as if Patricia's words couldn't touch her. This calm response only made Patricia angrier. Victor found himself drawn to Hope in a way that confused him. It wasn't romantic, it was something deeper, more spiritual. When she spoke, her voice reminded him of someone he'd lost long ago. When she smiled, it was like seeing sunlight after months of darkness. Patricia noticed Victor's growing fondness for Hope, and her jealousy transformed into something darker. She began plotting ways to make Hope's life so miserable that she would leave voluntarily. One evening, as Victor sat alone by the small fireplace, Hope approached him with an expression of profound sadness and love. I need to tell you something, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I know you don't remember me, but I remember you. Victor looked at her, confused. What do you mean? Hope knelt beside his chair and took his hand. My name isn't Hope. It's Amanda. I'm your daughter, Daddy. I've come back to you. Victor's words stopped. His heart hammered against his ribs as he stared into her eyes, eyes that suddenly looked exactly like his late daughter's. That's impossible, he whispered, but even as he said it, he felt the truth of it in his bones. I was sent back, Amanda said softly, not to live again, but to help you find your way back to love, to show you that not all of your family is lost. Victor's hands shook as he reached out to touch her face. She felt real, warm, alive, but there was something ethereal about her presence, something that existed beyond the physical world. I've been watching you suffer, Amanda continued. I've seen how lonely you've been, how much you've hurt. I came back to remind you what real love feels like and to protect you from those who would hurt you. As Victor held his daughter, his impossible, miraculous daughter, he felt a peace he hadn't experienced since the day she died. She was here somehow, and she loved him with the pure, uncomplicated love he'd been desperately missing. But their reunion was being watched. Patricia stood in the doorway, her face twisted with rage and something that looked almost like fear. Patricia's behavior escalated dramatically after that night. She sensed something different about Hope, something that threatened her position in ways she couldn't understand but desperately feared. That girl is manipulating you, Patricia hissed to Victor when they were alone. She's using your grief against you. Can't you see she's just another gold digger? But Victor no longer listened to Patricia's poison. For the first time in 15 years, he felt connected to someone who loved him unconditionally. Amanda would sit with him in the evenings and they would talk about everything, his fears, his disappointments, his dreams. She listened not to judge or to ask for things, but simply to understand. Patricia's jealousy reached a breaking point. She began sabotaging Amanda's belongings, putting salt in her food, and spreading lies about her to anyone who would listen. When these tactics failed to drive Amanda away, Patricia's desperation turned to something more dangerous. One morning, Victor woke up to find Amanda sitting by the window, staring out at the small river that ran behind their house. "She's going to try to hurt me," Amanda said without turning around. "I can feel a hatred growing stronger." "I won't let her," Victor said fiercely. "I'll protect you." Amanda smiled sadly. "You can't protect me from what's already happened, Daddy, but you can choose love over fear. When the time comes, you'll have to decide who you really want to be." That afternoon, Patricia made her move. She approached Amanda while Victor was in the village buying supplies. "I know what you're doing," Patricia said, her voice venomous. "You're trying to steal my husband, destroy my family. I won't let you." Amanda looked at her with infinite sadness. "I'm not trying to steal anything. I'm trying to give him back his heart." "You're a liar and a manipulator," Patricia screamed. "Get out of my house." "This isn't your house," Amanda said quietly. "This is a place where love should live. But you've brought so much hatred here that love can barely survive." Patricia's face contorted with rage. In that moment, consumed by jealousy and fear, she grabbed Amanda's arm and began dragging her toward the door. Victor returned from the village to find Patricia standing by the river, her clothes wet and her face pale with shock. Amanda was nowhere to be seen. "Where is she?" Victor demanded. Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. She fell in. I tried to save her, but the current was too strong." Victor's blood turned to ice. He ran to the river, calling Amanda's name, but the water was dark and swift. He dove in, searching desperately, but found nothing. For 3 days, Victor searched the river and the surrounding area. The local authorities were called, but no body was found. Patricia maintained her story about the accidental drowning, playing the role of the traumatized witness. But Victor knew his wife too well. He could see the guilt in her eyes, the way she avoided looking at him directly, the nervous energy that consumed her. On the third night, Patricia's conscience finally broke her. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed, falling to her knees in front of Victor. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I was just so jealous, so angry. I grabbed her arm to make her leave and we struggled, and she fell into the river. I tried to pull her out, but she went under and I couldn't reach her." Victor stared at his wife, the woman he'd shared his life with for 25 years, and saw a stranger. "You killed her!" "It was an accident," Patricia cried. "I never meant for her to die." "You killed my daughter," Victor said, his voice hollow with grief and rage. "Not once, but twice." Patricia's face crumpled in confusion. "What do you mean, twice?" "You killed Amanda 15 years ago too, didn't you?" Victor's voice was eerily calm. "That wasn't an accident either." Patricia's face went white. "How did you?" "Because I know you," Victor said. "I know your jealousy, your selfishness, your inability to let anyone else have my attention. Amanda was taking my focus away from you, so you got rid of her." Patricia's sobs turned to screams of denial, but Victor had heard enough. He walked to the door and opened it. "Get out," he said quietly. "Get out of my sight and never come back." "Victor, please," Patricia begged. "I'm your wife. I love you." "Love?" Victor laughed bitterly. "You don't know what love is. You killed the only two people who ever truly loved me. Get out before I call the police." Patricia stumbled toward the door, then turned back one last time. "What about our life together? What about everything we built?" "We built nothing," Victor said. "We accumulated things while I died inside. You wanted my money, not my heart. Well, the money's gone, and so are you." That night, Victor sat by the river, consumed with grief and rage. He had lost Amanda twice, been betrayed by his wife, and realized that most of his life had been built on false foundations. As he wept, he heard a voice calling his name. He looked up to see an elderly woman emerging from the mist that rose from the river. She was dressed in flowing robes that seemed to shimmer with their own light. "You are Victor," she said, and her voice was like the sound of water over stones. "Who are you?" Victor asked, though somehow he already knew. "I am the guardian of this river," she said. "I have watched over these waters for centuries, and I have seen much love and much pain." "You saw what happened to Amanda," Victor said. "Yes," the woman replied. "And I saw what happened 15 years ago as well." Victor's heart stopped. "You knew? Your wife brought your first daughter to this river in a rage, just as she brought the second. But the girl who returned to you was not an ordinary person seeking shelter." "I don't understand." The river guardian smiled. "Your daughter Amanda never truly left you. Her love was so strong that her spirit lingered, waiting for the right moment to return and heal your broken heart. She came back to show you what real love looks like and to reveal the truth about those who claim to love you. But Patricia killed her again," Victor said, his voice breaking. "No," the guardian said gently. "Patricia cannot kill love. Amanda's spirit is eternal. She came to give you a gift, the knowledge of what true love feels like, and to show you that you deserve better than the hollow relationships you've accepted." As she spoke, Victor felt a warmth spreading through his chest. The river began to glow with a soft, golden light, and he saw Amanda's face reflected in the water. "I love you, Daddy," Amanda's voice whispered from the river. "I always have, and I always will. Don't let anyone make you forget that you deserve to be loved." The vision faded, but the warmth remained. Victor understood now that Amanda's return hadn't been about coming back to life. It had been about reminding him how to live. The blessing of truth. Over the following weeks, Victor began to rebuild his life, not his financial empire, that had never been real to begin with, but his capacity for love and connection. Daniel, his son, visited regularly. The relationship, freed from the toxic dynamic of Patricia's jealousy and Sophia's self absorption, began to heal. Daniel revealed that he had always felt the family's dysfunction but hadn't known how to address it. "I'm proud of you for choosing love over money," Daniel told his father. "I want to learn how to do that too." Sophia, meanwhile, had moved in with friends in the city and was slowly learning to build a life based on her own merits rather than her father's wealth. The process was painful for her, but Victor could see that she was beginning to develop genuine friendships and real skills. As for Patricia, Victor heard through mutual friends that she had moved to another city and was seeking therapy. Part of him hoped she would find peace, but he knew their relationship was over forever. The simple life Victor had initially chosen as a test became his new reality. He discovered that he enjoyed the rhythm of small town life, the genuine connections with neighbors who knew him as a person rather than a bank account. The River Guardian had been right. Amanda's love had been a gift. It had reminded him that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars but in the depth of authentic relationships. It had shown him that he was worthy of love, not because of what he owned, but because of who he was. A new beginning. 6 months after Patricia's banishment, Victor stood by the river, where Amanda had first revealed her true identity. The water sparkled in the morning sunlight, and he could feel her presence like a warm embrace. "Thank you," he whispered to the water. "Thank you for coming back to save me." A gentle breeze stirred the surface of the river, and Victor could swear he heard Amanda's laughter carried on the wind. He turned away from the river and walked back toward his simple house, where Daniel was waiting with coffee and conversation. They had plans to visit the local school, where Victor had volunteered to teach business skills to teenagers. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was meaningful. For the first time in decades, Victor felt truly wealthy. He had lost everything material and gained everything spiritual. He had learned that love cannot be bought, loyalty cannot be purchased, and that sometimes losing everything is the only way to find what really matters. As he walked, Victor made a silent promise to Amanda's spirit. He would never again accept love that came with conditions. He would never again confuse material security with emotional safety, and he would spend the rest of his life honoring the gift she had given him, the knowledge that he was worthy of genuine love. The test had revealed the truth about his family, but more importantly, it had revealed the truth about himself. He was not just a man with money, he was a man with a heart capable of both giving and receiving unconditional love. And that, he realized, was the greatest fortune of all. In the end, Victor learned that the most valuable treasures cannot be stored in banks or displayed in mansions. They live in the connections we make, the love we give, and the courage we find to choose authenticity over security. Sometimes we must lose everything to discover what we truly possess.